Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're recording on, the Wurundjeri Willem clan and Tongarong people, and give our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We encourage everyone listening to consider the traditional owners of the land they're living and thriving on, and consider the benefits that may come from a treaty with the First Peoples. This is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land.
Olivia Muscat is a writer, performer, arts and cultural critic, and disability arts activist. Her show, Is Anyone Even Watching?, has been programmed by Arts House for their upcoming season, and her first children's picture book, My Name Is Jemima, is set for release by Scribble this year. In 2024, she was shortlisted for the Tex Prize for Children's and Young Adult Literature and took part in the Darabin Arts Speakeasy Development Program. Hi, Olivia.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me and the listeners today.
Thanks so much.
I guess my first question, something very exciting in your bio, My Name is Jemima, is coming out this year. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we're less than 3 months away now, which is wildly exciting. I've gotten to that point where I start talking about it and I actually can't stop smiling, which is really nice because it's been quite a long process for quite a number of reasons, most of them pretty boring. And now we're finally so close to it being released, and that's very exciting. And I guess I should tell you a bit about what it is. So my name is Jemima. If anyone listening happens to know me, I guess, I don't know why you would, but my guide dog's name is Jemima. A few years ago, I had this kind of idea in conversations with other people and just from my own experiences with children and adults to write a children's book that is fun and funny and cute, but also basically explains kind of the rules about guide dogs and why we don't talk to them when they work and why we can't pat them and why, why we can't distract them from what they're doing. And I think it's so important because so many kids love Jemima and Jemima loves so many kids, and I feel like an evil witch when I say, you can't give her a pat today, she's working. And that's kind of the end of the conversation, and they don't actually get a follow-up as to why, what she's working means and why they can't talk to her, because I know why they want to. She's adorable. And I got to pick up the first printed copy last week, and it was the most exciting day of my life.
That's so exciting.
Oh, it is. I just sniffed it like a weirdo. Just love new book smell. And that was like the newest book I've ever touched. But I went to the pub for a celebratory drink afterwards, and a little kid came up to me and was like, can I pet your dog? And I just wanted to hand him the book. And I was like, no, you can't have it. It's my copy. But I just wanted to hand it over and say, have a read, which is probably silly. But
Now, as anyone who's tried to write a picture book would know, it seems easy, but it's very, very difficult. Can you tell me about the process of writing it and the age of the children that you're speaking to?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing I did was Google how long is children's picture book, and that was not very helpful. But like the consensus was like 600 words. And as you say, you're like, ugh, 600 words, I could write that in my sleep. But when you're trying to tell a whole story in 600 words and make it have meaning and be funny and be understandable, it's actually really hard. So I just had a go. I think I just did many, many drafts, many drafts. I think there was something about this one because I was so clear about what I wanted out of it. And for some reason, there was a very clear Jemima voice in my head. It came quite naturally, but even then, it went through so many edits and I rewrote it so many times. And even up until quite recently, like there were still being edits made to it. And I was reading it yesterday for the audiobook and I was like, oh, we can't change anything now, can we? And they're like, no, we can't. because there were still things I wanted to change.
I have to ask, what does Jemima's voice sound like to you?
Oh, she's sassy. She's just so sassy. And she's probably less sassy in the final version of the audiobook than she is in my head. But she does, in my head, she's like making cutting remarks at people constantly, but is also, wanting to be everybody's best friend. So she's quite a diva. She's just a diva. Just picture the diveriest person you know, and that's probably what Jemima sounds like.
She's the Beyonce of dogs.
Here's the Beyonce of dogs. Thank you.
Now, anybody who's seen you,
Mm.
they will know that you have an amazing sense of clothing style and you dress very colorfully.
Yes.
Now, you are visually impaired, blind. What word do you prefer?
Well, I'm totally blind, so
Totally blind. So you are totes blind,
totes blind all the time.
but yet you dress in the most colorful clothes. So I was wondering, how do you understand color?
How do I understand color? Now, this is a question I get asked quite often, and I've never actually come up with like a really good answer. I understand color because I used to be able to see it, I guess. So I have in my mind very vividly what colors look like. And like colors also have a lot of nuance. So sometimes I just don't get it. Like I just can't picture the exact shade of something that somebody's trying to describe to me. And like that's fine. And I think maybe because my relationship to color was like formed in childhood, and then as an adolescent, that's when I lost the rest of my vision. My understanding of color like stalled at age 12. So I'm just like, yeah, I love pink. um, Throw all the colors at all the things all the time. Maybe that's what it is, but I don't think so because I definitely went through a phase in my like early 20s, early to mid 20s when I was like dressing in jeans and like grey knits. At the time, I didn't realize how unhappy I was with that situation. And I think there was really this like lessons of this expectation from like sighted people that I wouldn't have a relationship or understanding of color, and messages from within the blind community itself of like, well, why would you want to, like, you're not pretending to be a sighted person. Why would you want to dress colorfully? And one day I was just like, I don't know, I cannot tell you what flipped that for me or what made me realize that that was all complete. Am I allowed to swear? Because I just want to say it's bullshit because it's bullshit.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like what made me realize that that was all bullshit. But one day I woke up, you know what? I think it was during the pandemic. How weird is that? And I was like, no, I can do whatever I want. If I want to wear yellow overalls and a pink top, I'm gonna. And if I want to wear a dress with like rainbows or platypuses or ice creams on it, I'm going to do that too. My understanding of color, I think, bears very little on what I choose. Yeah, it's really hard to describe. I'm sorry, I've given you a very all over the place answer.
No, that's okay. The idea that you don't care, the first thing that came to my head was, yes, queen, nor should you care. And as somebody who very much appreciates your style, it works for you. So
Thank you. But I can't say I don't care. Like, I'm not like going on and being like, okay, I'm going to wear this dress and I'm going to put like whatever tights on, and I literally don't care. I do spend a lot of time kind of being quite meticulous about planning. I'm a night before gal. If you ever see me and like I'm in jeans and like still a fun top, but like pants, it's like, she got dressed this morning and didn't think about it last night. Um, but usually when I've spent time, like I use AI now to like pick the like tights or shoes that I wear, like to identify if there's colors that are picked out like in the pattern, stuff like that really. And I label a lot of my stuff with like audio or braille labels as well. So I know exactly what I'm wearing because I'm the sort of person who once I found a cardigan that I liked, I bought it in 10 colors. So labels, very handy.
me too. That sounds very similar to me. Could you tell me about your relationship with either your disability or just the label of disability and disability pride in general? You can sort of answer the question however you like, but could you tell me, especially if it's something that sort of worsened over time, can you tell me about your relationship with disability?
It's a difficult one. It's definitely evolved over time, for sure. It's tricky. because now, like, I still feel like it's complicated, and I still feel like if I tell you what I think, disability or disability pride means to me, that I'm going to get it wrong. And I think that says a lot about like belonging to such a big community with so many different people in it. Guess what? We're not all homogenized. We know that. We're not one big entity. But I think to give a really practical, illustration of it, I think when I was in high school, I don't know about before this, but definitely in high school, sort of after I'd lost my vision. So when I went from being vision impaired to totally blind, I really remember this time where I was like, I'm not disabled. I'm blind. I'm not disabled. And that was very important to me. And that was a very important distinction. And it wasn't really till I started engaging with disabled writers and disabled artists and makers and creators of all sorts, and really kind of immersing myself in disability kind of community and culture that way, and like learning about the social model of disability, which now I'm like, yes, big fan.
For our listeners that are new to that concept, could you explain your understanding of it?
My understanding of it, okay. The way I like to explain it for anyone who really hasn't encountered it before is that using me personally as an example. So the social model of disability says that it's not, the disability that's the issue. It's the systemic, social and attitudinal and all sorts of barriers that are actually the problem. So I'm not disabled by the fact that I can't see. I'm disabled by the fact that this world is kind of obsessed with doing things in a visual way. So if you put a printed sheet of paper in front of me and expect me to read that, I'm not disabled by the fact that I can't see it. I'm disabled by the fact that you've given me a piece of paper that is inaccessible to me and I can't read it that way. Because I can read. I read a lot, much to some people's great confusion. So yeah, understanding that disability, isn't something to be ashamed of and isn't a dirty word or a bad word or put you in this like sad category of people, which was like the attitudes that were around me, growing up, which is why I like tried to distance myself from the word disabled or disability. But once I, learnt about that, and like that is the like bare bones definition of social model of disability. There's so much more to it than that. But we could be here for ages. Book me for a 2-hour seminar.
We've got time. We've got time. Talking about how your acceptance, I suppose, being part of the disability community changed when you connected with a lot of people. How did you first connect with people from the disability community?
Yeah. I feel like super dirty saying this now, but it's Twitter. X, formerly Twitter. When it used to be a nice place to hang out. Really, it's like where I started making a lot of, connections with people and learning what other people were writing and talking about and making and discussing. And it was, you could just start up conversations with people and it was really nice. And I'm quite sad and lost at the moment in a way because I don't feel I have that sort of community in the same way. There's no like medium that acts as that kind of community for me anymore. I'm not saying it's not out there, but I haven't found a place that A, I like, and B, is literally accessible to me that fills that kind of gap. But that was definitely first. And then going to, events and engaging with like, yeah, sort of it started online and then sort of moved to in person, like attending whether it's workshops or talks or events. They were either about by and for the disabled community or were just like adjacent to it. Like maybe it was just art things. There were just other disabled people there.
Speaking of art things, could you tell me about your love of theatre?
My love of theatre. Gosh, it starts all the way back in kindergarten when I had a cry because I didn't get cast as Mary in the Nativity. Actually, so maybe it goes back further than that. I've always loved it. I am a dramatic person. I've always gotten the chills if I've like seen something live on stage, like way back to like my mum taking me to see the Wiggles or whatever. And it's just, yeah, it started there, has evolved, and literally has never ever left me. I'm just obsessed with it in all its weird forms, I've got to say. But yeah, I must confess, like I'm a musical theatre freak. That's my number one thing. And it's been a complicated relationship, this love I have of theatre, because it hasn't always loved me back, or I got to say the industry hasn't always loved me back. It was a very, very long road to get to where I am now, and I still don't feel like I'm exactly where I want to be with theatre. But anyway, I left high school. I had the best drama teacher. We had run-ins at first. Like she was like, "Oh my God, you can't do this. You can't see," or whatever, and was very like blocky, as no good drama person should be. Don't block. Yes, and
And then you were like, watch me. Yes, I can.
pretty much, basically, is exactly what happened. Lucky for me, I had my parents on my side. They were not like, "Oh, you can't do it. It's too dangerous." They were like, "Why can't you do it? She's good at it." So we like going through high school, we had this amazing relationship, she and I, and basically just did all the plays all the time. And then left school, or not left school, went to like uni open days and all that stuff, like the VCA and Monash, like doesn't exist anymore, but they had a really cool performing arts degree. And you could just, I would always speak to whoever was in charge. And the vibes were not good. It was very much an, oh, yeah, you can audition, but like, we don't know how we'd include you. Like, this isn't for you. So I pivoted to a music degree, and then I pivoted to an arts degree, and have slowly found my way back to theatre over time. Not to say I never stopped, going to see theatre and enjoying it and loving it, but I did have to find my way back to it in a like performy place.
Did anyone ever tell you explicitly what it was they thought you couldn't do? Or was it just a vibe that they were going to make it difficult?
Definitely that a lot, the difficulty. People always seemed really concerned with safety, like it would be dangerous for me to walk around. It was just a general, I don't think they'd even thought it through. It was just a general, nah, you can't, oh, just take one look at you and no. I ended up auditioning for the really cool performing arts program at Monash, and I actually got in. I was so disheartened that I didn't take the place. Like I was so disheartened by my conversation with the dude who was in charge of it that I didn't take the place. And like that's also on me. I could have taken that place. But at that point in time I was like, no, no one wants me. There's no room for me. No one wants blind people on stage, because why would they?
And it's also how many battles am I going to have to fight along the way?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. No, I did have that exact thought process too. It's like, well, this is just stage one. There'd be 3 more years of this thing isn't accessible, or they won't let me do this, or they're underestimating me here. And I'm sure that would have happened. Absolutely sure. No doubts. The conversation we originally had, like, because I was interested in all aspects of theatre, not just acting, and like was very open to like either pivoting to other, theatre practices or at least trying them out. And this conversation involved, he commented, "Oh, yes, we've got someone in the course now. I don't remember if he said vision impaired or something, but it was something like that. And she's directing a play right now." And I just went, oh, like my eyes must have lit up. It's like, that's so cool. Like, how good is that? That's awesome. I don't even know if I said anything or I just pulled like a really excited face. And he was like, "Oh, no, but she's got much more vision than you." And I was like, right. A, you just met me. B, what?
Oh,
Shut down much.
I don't, I'm speechless. So could you tell me how you got into being a critic?
That is a harder one to explain. I think it became somehow very known in the blindness community, or at least like the blind music community, that I was like the theatre girl. and I was super into theatre. Even though I'd like kind of pivoted from it at that stage, I was still kind of, in that world. I was, oh, Olivia, she's the theatre girl. She likes musicals and plays and stuff. Through someone I met through that community, introduced me to an audio describer who introduced me to Alison Croggan, who was running Witness Performance at the time. And they'd had talks about representing more accessible theatre and critiquing it. And I was introduced to her and was a big fan of her writing from way back. So that was an exciting moment for me. And it sort of stemmed from there. So I did a bit of stuff for Witness for a while, and sadly they had to cease operations because of lack of funding. And I've done a bit elsewhere. I still do it here and there. I think it's harder to be a critic when you're trying to make your own work. So that's something I've sort of stepped back from. I still do it a lot in my head. But yeah, it's all sort of started from conversations on conversations on conversations, and just taking up random meetings with people I didn't know very well, which is horrifically scary for me at the time, but I did it. And it was really great. That was nearly 7 years ago. Feels like a lot longer. But yeah, that's how I got into being a critic. And I found it hard to ever, I still kind of find it difficult to call myself a critic. But, I've written reviews for lots and lots of plays and lots of dance and even books. I got into book because, yeah, I did some book reviews for the Saturday paper as well in the end, which is its own thing. But yeah, so it's not a straightforward road to criticdom, but that's the sort of the story behind it.
I think a lot of people would be interested in how you are a critic for a play that you can't see. So do you rely on the audio description, or do you just go by what you hear, or how does that work?
Yeah, always a good question. I think that part of what my role was when I started working with Alison and Witness was to review what I was seeing, and to a point review the accessibility stuff as well. So the audio description or the tactile tour or whatever it was. And I think that came about because there was, and kind of still is, a lack of standards around what that looks like and whether it needs to be good. Definitely we've shifted. It's shifted. There's a lot more awareness of it now. But back then especially, there were two providers really doing it, and it was awkward, and they were competitive and volunteer-based stuff. It still needs to be good and held accountable, and at that stage it wasn't. Sorry, that's sort of separate from your question, but I'm getting to it. I swear.
No, but it's good to talk about as well, because myself, I'm in a wheelchair, and a lot of the time you go to a place and if they have a ramp, it's like they're patting themselves on the back that they have a ramp, when that should be sort of the minimum of what they're supposed to do. So
Mhm.
it's interesting for you to say that even volunteer-based organizations, there still needs to be a good standard
Mm,
of accessibility in the arts.
mm. And it's not it's not good enough that, oh, because they're volunteers and they're doing a nice thing. Well, yeah, but they need to do a good job. I remember reviewing one play, and I literally mentioned in the review that I turned off the AD during it because it was so lacking. But I guess, do you want me to just explain a bit for anyone who doesn't know what audio description is? Or,
That would be wonderful.
I mean, it's pretty basic, when you get down to it. Audio description is a alternative track that people are usually listening to through headphones. If it's a live performance, you can get it in the movies as well. You could turn it on Netflix. That's open, not closed. So it's just plays through your TV. And it's just an alternative track that describes between the dialogue and the important bits what's going on visually. And there's only so much you can say in those gaps. You can't get everything, but it's so you get, the important stuff. And good AD is so good. It just changes everything. I can't think of a theatre example because I rarely see a show with and without AD. It's not a common thing. But, there's so many movies. I'm just going to use Emma, the 2020 Emma, as an example because it's one of my favorite movies. The first time I saw it, I hated it. and I didn't have audio description. And I was so bored. Like, I was so bored in that cinema. I didn't know who was who. I couldn't tell them apart. I don't know if I just wasn't concentrating. Like, who knows? I'm pretty good at telling voices apart. But anyway, had a terrible time. A little while later, I watched it with audio description. I was like, this is so good. I love the costumes. I know who's talking now. Like, I know what's going on. And this is a fantastic film. Whether you agree with me or not, I don't know. But for me, it makes such a difference. A good audio description track. So that is mostly how I review theatre. Like, I'll go to shows with audio description, which, occur once or twice in a run. Woohoo! And it just, yeah, I went to a show. It wasn't a show for me to review, but I went to a show at Arts House last weekend, and it was a children's show. There were mostly adults there, but it was technically a children's show. And it was very visual, very movement heavy. Like, it basically relied mostly on the movement, but there was an AD track, and I had a great time. It was so good. Like, if I'd sat through that show without it, I would have snoozed. Like, I just would have been like, what am I even doing here? But because of the AD track, it was great. I knew exactly what was going on. I got to laugh when everyone else was laughing. There's nothing worse than feeling like you're like left out of a funny bit because you haven't seen what's happened. It's such a sad feeling. It's like, oh, everyone's laughing and I don't know what's going on. What's so funny?
I think that's something that a lot of people, it just wouldn't even cross their mind how galvanizing a good laugh is with other people. So that's really interesting.
I love a laugh. I'm the biggest fan of a laugh. So when I get to like laugh along with everybody else because of a visual gag, it's just the best day.
It was interesting what you were saying about audio description kind of making or breaking a play sometimes, because I feel that way when I listen to audio books where the speaker isn't sort of who I thought it should be, or the voice doesn't align with who I have in my head.
Yeah.
And it can really make or break a book for me.
Oh my gosh, there's nothing like a bad audiobook narrator. Sorry. There are bad ones. But like, yeah, that's kind of it with AD too. It's like, don't be coughing into the mic, please. Like, that was the level that was what we were dealing with a few years ago.
Has that actually happened?
Oh, snotting, coughing, talking in the background, not turning off your mic while the dialogue's going. Oh, yeah.
See, for me, I would have thought it should be a performance of its own.
I'm inclined to agree with you there.
Yeah, I just can't get over that they care so little that that's how they would react.
But thankfully, we've moved on a bit from that. And we go too far the other way and people get in their head about it needing to be a performance. I'm like, well, technically, it firstly needs to serve its purpose. Like, it needs to convey the visual information. Then if you can find a way to like integrate it and make it part of the show or something, or do it in a creative way, great. But you're right, it does need to at very least meet the standards of performance of like, be professional and not gross.
Yeah. That's disgusting. I find like bodily functions and things gross. So I would probably, if I was you, I would be gagging away and yeah.
Oh my gosh. I've not been a good audience member on those particular nights.
Can you tell me about, is anyone even watching?
Yes, sorry, I got confused. I have two projects that start with the letter I, and I didn't talk about this in my color thing, but I have synesthesia, and color is very connected to a lot of things in my brain, and I get confused with words.
Okay, we have to talk about that. Tell me about synesthesia.
So I have it's the most common form of synesthesia, where in my head, letters and numbers are inextricably linked with certain colors. Like, there's nothing I can do to change it. It's not like as I'm talking, I don't like see the words come up in color, but if it's the title of something or somebody's name or something important to remember or just a word I've chosen to focus on for some reason, I see it in very vivid color in my head. So I'll use you as an example because your name has an I and an O in it. It's got shades of red and yellow because I is always yellow and O is always red.
Oh, wow.
And the E in your name is there, but because it's not an E sound, it's just like a lengthening E. For the O, it doesn't. It shades the color a little bit, but it doesn't appear as orange, which is the color of E.
That's fascinating.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
Is that connected at all to your disability or no?
No, I think it's entirely separate.
Wow.
And I also have a spatial version, which means I see things like time, days of the week, years, whatever, all things related to time in a very spatial way, which I cannot explain to you. I wouldn't know how to explain it. But to me, it's like time is on this loop and I can like focus in on particular days or months, and March is red. So everything's red at the moment. I have a very good internal calendar because of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it make you somewhat more organized?
Yeah, it makes me able to remember like dates and times of things. At the moment, I'm having to write everything down in my calendar because it's just bananas and I will forget things. But yeah, if you tell me your birthday, I will never forget it.
21st of the 10th 88.
All right, it's going in.
There we go.
It's there.
What just happened in your brain? Is it a color?
Yeah, it was a color for the 28th and the 10th. So 10th and October both have different colors as well. But 88, very pink. If I see too many eights in my brain, I get a bit of a headache from all the pink. It's weird. It's so strange. But yeah, because you said, is anyone even watching? I had to take a minute to go, wait, is anyone even watching? I don't want to be your friend. Which one did she say? Okay, got it.
Well, I'm going to ask you about both. So
This is such a weird interview. I'm so sorry.
no, unless you're not enjoying it, let's keep going.
No, I'm so fine.
So let's talk about, is anyone even watching?
So essentially what Is Anyone Even Watching will be is a show during Fringe Festival this year. I think. I actually don't know if that's like public knowledge, but whatever. And it is basically 50 minutes of me pretending to be Lizzie McGuire. Does that reference mean anything to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. But what it really is this show that I've sort of devised. I'm still developing it. Like it's still, it's been several years, but I'm still working on it. It's a show about what language is and what exclusion is and how people have historically used language to hold power over disabled people, particularly blind people, through things like terrible audio description or no audio description. So it's a bunch of little like vignettes I've created, and it's all like themed around a early 2000s sleepover or slumber party and school camp. And it started because I was kind of doing a bit of a theatre development as part of Culture Lab, and was exploring why I'm so obsessed with dance and being excluded from dance my entire life, both as a like kid trying to learn it and as an adult trying to like see it in the theater, like watch them dance. And like I speak to so many blind people or people with low vision who are like, oh, I've got no interest because no one makes it accessible. And I'm like, no, I have obsessive interest because no one makes it accessible to me. And what is it? And how can we make it better? And why does it suck so much? And what is it about people that makes them think that, oh, a blind person can't dance? No, blind person has trouble learning dance because you use stupid words to describe what you're talking about. So we did this performance where me and my co-performer Zoe, we came up with this routine of like some really common dance moves that a lot of people would know, if you say what they are. I can't even like a grapevine or something. And then really weird ones, like we had like cultural references like Il David from Schitt's Creek, which was like a particular hand movement. And then we like merged that into a Perving on the Neighbours was the name of one of our moves. And we made up this whole dance. And like I had to learn so many dance moves that I didn't know because I'd never seen them. And then I made up an alternative, which is how I would interpret all the things we were saying. And some of them were as silly as like pa, pa, bam. Like that was the whole instruction. So we like devised this dance of how I would interpret all these words, and we did the dances. And honestly, people thought it was the funniest thing. And I was like, this is the best day ever. And now that sort of snowballed into an entire show where we play with that concept. And so there will be dancing and there will be makeovers, because that's another thing. People are freaked out by the fact that like I do my makeup every day. And I wear a red lip quite often. It's like, but how? And it's like, well, practice. That's how. I know my face.
Mhm.
And yeah, I fuck up sometimes. I made my eyebrow blue once. It's no big deal. So yeah, makeovers and like lots of like movie like things that people either have a reference for in their own lives or from pop culture. And like it was still like the scale still depends on whether we get certain, bits of funding or whatever. But honestly, it's just like gonna be a really fun time.
I can't wait to see it.
Oh, please come.
When are people able to come along?
Arts House has to launch their season 2 program, but it will be probably October-y, November-y sometime. And I will be posting obsessively about it because like I need more than 5 people in the audience.
I'll be there.
There'll be games, there'll be Pictionary, all sorts. And my goal is, because I hate audience participation, like do not pick on me, do not look at me. And I think that stems from an inaccessibility thing as well. You might have, experienced a similar thing where it's like, don't pick me because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get up on that stage and not make a fuss. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yep.
I had a comedy experience. I was going to say recently, but it's probably like 3 years ago now, where a bunch of my friends and I went to see this comedian, and he was looking for an audience participant. And like the room went really silent. It's like, this has been a weirdly long time. Pick someone already, mate. And my friend was like, I think he's trying to make eye contact with you. And I was just like out loud, I was like, oh, that's awkward.
Oh, no.
It wasn't a very big room. It was just like, oh, what a fun time. And like my friend that had whispered to me went up instead, and it was fine and we all moved on. But I was like, gross. That's why I hate audience participation. So I'm trying to design the most accessible, optional audience participation experience I can. So if me saying things like, oh, someone will get to come play Pictionary and someone will, do a dance or put on a costume or get a makeover, if that scares you, like you won't just be picked randomly.
Yeah.
I need to make this clear to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I do improvisation theatre, and we have to let people know that it's okay to come to the front row because we're not going to pick on you.
You're allowed to sit in the front. We won't point and laugh.
Now for another thing that starts with I. Could you tell me about I Don't Want to Be Your Friend?
Sure can. I Don't Want to Be Your Friend is a middle grade novel. So 8 to 10, 9 to 12, that kind of age range. It's about 2 grade 5s anyway. And they're not friends. One of them, Maeve, has been blind since birth, and that's her only experience of life. And the other character, Annie, has recently suddenly lost her sight. And they put in the same grade at school by a series of fun coincidences. And it's basically about their kind of surprisingly unlikely road to friendship. And it's a book I've been working on, and it's going to be published next year. So that's exciting.
Yay.
Yeah, and it's what I've sort of started calling it the 2020s blind hating Alice and Ashley. This feels like a nice comparison to me. But it's just, and again, it's quite joyful. It's got some sad parts. There were bits of writing it that literally made me cry. But I think it was just a very personal, like, oh, you put your feelings and yourself into your writing, and of course you're going to cry sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just really a story. It's not a story about blindness or disability necessarily. It's there big time. But it is a story about friendship and love and empathy and maturing enough to view the world through somebody else's perspective.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you was around writing about blindness.
Mm.
Are you doing that to educate people, or are you doing that because of the thing about write what you know, or is it a bit of both?
So I've reached a point in my sort of writing artist journey where that's educating isn't my main goal. My art that I want to make is not for your education. But it's a byproduct of the fact that I'm going to make art from my own perspective and from my own experience. And that's where I'm at. Like maybe I'll get to another point in a few years or whatever, where I'm like, I'm going to do something like that's completely related, like doesn't feature blindness in any capacity. But I'm not at that point yet. I'm still at a very like, I want to make art about me and people like me because I haven't seen it. It's not there. We need more. We're still here where we're like, "Oh, we need more disability rep that's like authentic and good." We haven't passed that point just yet. Like it's out there. It's there if you know where to look for it, and some that breaks through kind of to the mainstream. But it's not front and center. Like it doesn't share the front and center with other important stories that need to be told. Um, so if people get some sort of education from what I make, awesome. Like, cool. It's not like I don't want to educate anyone ever. It's more just like I want to make what I want to make. And I want to make things that feature me or people like me. Because when I, like, speaking of, I don't want to be your friend, when I grew up, like, once I saw this blind girl in the Saddle Club, and man, her story arc sucked.
I remember that.
Yeah, I've mentioned it in a few places, and like anyone who watched the Saddle Club will probably have a very vivid memory of that episode where the blind girl comes for one episode, and guess what? She gets injured and is never seen again. And even at 9, I was like, it's not cool. Sucks. My mum's not like that. Like, she could ride a horse if she wanted to. And she was very much like a little educational plot point for the main Saddle Club girls. And like, is anyone even watching? Correct. Like, please, anyone, if anyone's listening and like wants to correct me, please do. But I personally am yet to see a blind person on a mainstream stage in a cool, interesting, fun role. I feel like outside of like my little echo chamber and echo chambers that, exist kind of, I mean, the UK's got way more going on, and probably the US and Canada as well. But outside those like echo chambers, it's like, yeah, we're still not there. We're still not there on main stages and in stories that just like aren't about how sad it is or how crazy it is or inspirational it is to be a disabled person or a blind person.
I'm actually horrified because when you said that, I was like, surely I can think of someone or something, but nothing's coming to mind.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that there isn't.
No, absolutely not. I never want to make blanket statements because nobody can be across everything. And I've been particularly like offline in the last little while, quite a while. So who knows what I've missed? Like there are performers, they're out there. I'm like, yeah, I'm not by any means trying to say I'm the only one, because I'm definitely not. Yeah, it's still an area that it's like we're incredibly underrepresented. So I'm very much in that. And I guess maybe that does mean I'm making work to educate. You know what I mean? It's this thing, it always comes back to like, are we educating simply by like existing and putting ourselves out there and speaking out? It's a oddly complicated question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy answering it.
I remember as a teenager thinking that I didn't want to be an advocate because I misunderstood it and thought it meant that I had to join parliament or something. So I was thinking I don't want to be an advocate. And then, yeah, sometimes you're advocating for equality simply by asking for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just trying to do your thing. Yeah, and I don't know if you felt this, doing what you do and being a creative person and a writerly person. But I always come across in like if I'm giving a workshop or speaking to other disabled writers or whatever it might be. And there's usually a question of like, well, do I have to write about my disability? I'm like, oh no, you can write about whatever you want. But people feel this pressure that in order to be taken seriously, and there's two angles of pressure. People either feel the pressure to completely hide their disability, not even have their work have a whiff of disability about it, and sort of mask or hide in that way, or the pressure to like mind their own trauma because that's what'll get, views or get published or whatever it is.
Yeah, or that's what's unique about them, so that's what will make them stand out. Yeah.
And like, if that's what you want to do, all for it. Either of those things. If that's what you want to do, it's your individual choice. I don't like, it's what I always tell people. But if you want to write, about aliens, I'm not a sci-fi person. I don't know. If you write like something set in outer space and happen to have a disabled character, go for it. If you want to write romance that only features disabled characters, go for it. If you want to write a weird literary fiction that takes itself very seriously and features no disabled characters, go for it. It's your life. But you just have to find a way to ignore that pressure. And it's so hard. Like, I felt it. Like, for the first sort of few years of my writing career, I hesitate to use that word, but it's what's come out of my mouth. Um, that pressure to, that's the only interesting thing about me. That's the only thing people are going to want to read about. That's all they're interested in. That's what I'm going to write about. And I'm going to do it from a really fairly dark, traumatic place. And it took me a while to unlearn all of that. And I'd come from the previous place of, well, I'm going to ignore my disability completely and people won't know and it'll be fine. So I jumped from one extreme to the other and I've had to like unpick and unlearn both of those. I don't know if you've gone through anything similar.
Yeah, but then once you get to the other side, it's quite liberating to realize you can do whatever you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Literally.
I was struck by the fact just then, and I don't want to, nitpick at you, but I was struck by the fact that you sort of stopped yourself when you were saying that you had a writing career. I have seen your writing and it's pretty prolific. I would say that you do have a writing career. So I was just wondering what your hesitation was.
That's a good question. Imposter syndrome, probably the short answer. But also I think in that specific case, because I was referring to a long time ago, when, especially at that point, I was like, well, this isn't a career, this is something you're trying to do. So I think that's where that came from. And I guess, yeah, I can't really say, no, I don't have a writing career, because at this point there are several books and many, many, many articles and things with my name on them. So thank you for pulling me up, because I do get imposter syndrome. Like, literally, I was sitting there recording my own audiobook yesterday and going like, oh yeah, this is real. You're not a fraud. Well done.
You're like the furthest thing from a fraud. So it's quite comforting to hear that someone like you has imposter syndrome because
Oh, big time.
yeah. Speaking of articles that you've written, I recently read one where you spoke about, I think it was 30 things that you've done now that you're 30.
Yes.
I was struck by just the sheer amount that you've done and wondering how you fit it all in. So do you have, I mean, it's a bit wanky to call it a creative process sometimes, but do you have like a routine that you have to produce as much as you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've been living in Wacky Town this week because it's grant writing season. So no worries there. I'm a very spontaneous creative, and I think I've relied a lot on that in the past, where I'm like, well, it's 1 a.m. and I feel like writing, so I'm gonna. And then like for the 2 weeks after that, I'm like, no, I can't. No ideas. Too busy. Too busy. Too busy with what? I don't know. But in the past couple of years, I've really had to refine that and actually hone a creative process and kind of build one for myself, because being spontaneous and doing whatever you want and sort of sleeping in or staying up really late or whatever is all well and good until you have 5,000 deadlines, which is the place I currently find myself in. And I'm definitely the sort of person who consumes. And that is what inspires me. Like my own life inspires me, obviously. But I'm very sorry, that was so wanky. My own life inspires me. What I meant was I write what I know and I take things from my own life. And, that informs my creativity and, the experiences of people I know and love and all those other things. But very much I am inspired by watching and reading and just taking in other art or other writing. So I've tried to build that into my actual process. So now I have a schedule. I have a very strict working from home schedule that I'm loving, honestly. I'm such a anti-calendar, just go with the flow gal, but I'm surprised by how much I'm really enjoying my very regimented work from home day schedule. And that gets interrupted because last week I was in a writer's room. And so I didn't stick to my schedule and I didn't go for my walk at 2 o'clock because I was in a writer's room. And yesterday, I was doing recordings. So, didn't stick to my schedule and that's fine. I'm very flexible with that sort of thing. But within my regimented creative process, I build in boring things like admin time and, scheduling time, but I build in time to listen to podcasts about writing or read plays by playwrights that are great. So when I have to write my own play, I have things in my brain of just this is a bunch of plays that I've read and not plagiarizing them, but just taking little bits from them or techniques. Been reading a lot of books on, craft. That was very much a January thing this year though. Now I'm very much into my, okay, I need to make things. I need to be creative myself. And I think for me, it's still very important to build in that time to watch an entire season of Starstruck in an afternoon or read, Fleabag again.
I've never read Fleabag, but I love the show.
Oh, I saw the play before I ever saw the TV show, and it just wowed me. I was like, how do you write so good?
I hope I get to see the play at some point.
If you ever get the chance, please do, because it's phenomenal. And even reading it, I was just like, oh, so good. Yeah, so that's kind of my creative process, and I'm trying to be very good about. Now, this sounds super wishy-washy and a bit wanky as well, but literally get a good night's sleep. It sounds so silly when I say it out loud, but I'm such a night owl that I have to fall, and I have such bad insomnia at times that, I'm just part of my routine is forcing me to wash my face and do my skincare at 10:30 and be fully asleep with my melatonin by 11 and then getting up at 7 o'clock and doing some stretches. Um, for me, who really has trouble with sitting in my chair all day, and has spent a lot of money on physio because of that. Just do a little bit of yoga stretching. And I'm not saying this is the routine to follow by any, it sounds really silly as I say it.
It actually sounds very impressive because it requires a lot of discipline.
Discipline, and it's something I kind of lack naturally. So I have my little scheduling app structured. It's my best friend. And literally I designate every hour of the day basically, except between, 6 and 10:30. That's just, I can do what I want. And usually what I want is reading a book or, going to trivia. So yeah, it's that's kind of where my process is at the moment. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing 2 weeks of development. So again, that structure and discipline, I was going to say will go out the window. It won't go out the window. It'll just be put in a different direction because it's not just me at my computer. It's me in a rehearsal room trying to do a dance and, put a play together.
In the first episode that we did of this podcast, Kath Duncan was saying that one of the most important things that she's found as a disabled creative going for grants and things
Mm.
is to find like-minded people to support you so that you can apply for grants as a group. Have you had any difficulty or do you have any thoughts about applying for grants as an individual as opposed to finding a group of people to apply with?
Yeah, if you've got a group around you, it's much easier to have a freak out because there's someone there to freak out too. Honestly, I mean, just like the support of having people around you. And for me, in my early years, I was doing everything alone. And it felt so lonely. And I'm not sure how much I realized that at the time because I kind of thought that's just the way it was. But yeah, it really makes a difference, like to surround yourself with people, even if you're not like applying all together for the same project, like as a group, but just having people who are doing that as well. Yeah, just having people around you who are sort of going through the same thing at the same time is so beneficial. And, people you can say, oh my gosh, this question, and they get exactly what you're talking about. But even when you are literally applying for something as a group, it kind of, especially like we were talking before about minding your own trauma or your own life experience or whatever, and feeling maybe the obligation to do that because that's what you feel is most interesting, especially in an application, right? It takes the pressure off you to do that. Like, because either there's people there going, we don't have to do this. We can talk about like what we're making and why we're making it, or just like spreading it around a bit, just taking the pressure off an individual in a lot of different ways, really. Yeah, and look, I still do a lot of solo things, and I think as like a writer of prose of books, that stuff always still comes up. But even then, I don't feel like I'm ever doing anything entirely alone anymore. Like, have people around me who get it and who I can rant to and who I can send something to and go, is this actually answering the question? Or have I just talked about something completely different?
It sounds like you found your tribe.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think, again, a very flexible thing. I don't like to think of those things as concrete. That sounds quite pessimistic of me, but like things change and different people are around you at different times, and that's okay.
Just as one of the final questions, you can be as political or not as you want with this answer. Take it wherever you want. Obviously, a lot of being a performer in the community arts space or a writer, it's not the most financially rewarded career. And often you have to rely on grants and things like that.
Mm.
What could the government or society more generally do to enable disabled artists to have more sustainable careers, do you think?
Don't make them fight for crumbs. And I don't have the answer to how that would work in practice, but stop making us fight for crumbs, please. Everyone deserves a chance. And I'm not saying that we just throw money at everything and doesn't matter if it's actually good or not. But there are so many good things out there and people making good things and interesting things. There needs to be a fairer way to get money that doesn't make you want to pull your hair out and scream and feel like you're being pitted against either people from your own marginalization, so whether it's the disability community or whether we're pitting marginalizations against each other and different intersectional identities against each other. I was in what essentially is a competition between marginalized groups who want to make things. I don't want to like get into specifics because it is actually like in a lot of ways it's a great initiative that you go in there and you talk about your project and you hear about everyone else's project and you're like, I feel like they're just pitting different identities against each other, different, marginalized identities against each other. And that's so unfair in so many ways, and ultimately one or two people get the money even though all the projects are deserving of it. So to me, I guess it's like doing away, and again, I don't have the practical answer to this, but doing away with competition. Like it's we're not competing for like who's had the worst time of it. And sometimes that can be what it feels like. And that really gets under my skin in a very unpleasant way. There's an element of that with grant writing. I sort of feel it's harder to feel that immediately when you're grant writing because you're so focused on your own thing. But I definitely feel it sometimes. I'm like, well, what if there's like someone whose identity they like more than mine, rather than what if there's somebody whose project they like more than mine? And that is a horrible way to think and a horrible way to feel. I just want to come up with the answer right now. Not sure I can.
You also don't want it to be a checkbox exercise where they feel good about themselves because they've rewarded every minority either.
Yeah. I just think there's something about the way the certain questions are asked in certain funding applications that you're like, really? Really? Is that really what matters in this situation? It's such a complicated thing. I mean, to make my life easier personally, just like have a funding pool that you just give out to people who ask for it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not the person to fix this particular problem, but I just know that like even as someone, and I think this, comes back to what we were talking about before, and like my deep level of imposter syndrome, I think some of it still comes from, and I don't think this is a disability specific experience at all, but an Australian arts sector experience maybe, of like the constant need to be like scrapping for cash, and like that you're up against everybody else, and that only the best things get funded and get made, or people who can fund them themselves. But yeah, it's that, oh, well, I feel like I've actually, I've done quite a bit in my career, but still I'm at this place where it's like, you got to fight. You got to fight for the money. You got to fight for the right to make things. And I don't think that ever goes away. With the arts the way they are now, I don't think that ever goes away. Unless you can like fully fund yourself, which would be quite rare. Yeah, I don't think that ever goes away. But yeah, I don't have the answer, unfortunately. It seems like such a big, systemic, deeply rooted issue about the way we think about art and its importance to society that would require some massive cultural shift. But yeah, like in the immediate though, stop looking at disabled people and just writing them off. We can do all sorts of fun things. We're pretty cool. So like that judgment barrier that just pops up for so many people still. Just listen, just ask questions and listen. That's like the immediate thing, apart from solving the, you know, sector-wide issues of money. Ask questions, be open, listen to the answers, have real conversations with people. Don't just like discount them on site.
Here, here. I want to give you a space to plug yourself just before we finish. People who are listening who want to support you, what are some ways they can do that?
What are some ways they can do that? Well, they can subscribe to my Substack, which is Olivia, what is my name? Olivia Muscat.substack.com. And that's where I mostly talk about what's coming up, what I'm doing. I do like little wrap-ups about like being a person working in the arts, little monthly like, oh, what have I been doing and how has that been difficult or easy? Because I always find those things really useful to read. So I'm just like, oh, I'll write them myself. And I'm trying to be a lot better at being consistent with those. And I put up, because I'm such a, as I was saying before, such a consumer of things, I always put up a little roundup of what I've read and found interesting in a month. So if you're into those things and you want to know what I'm up to, please swing by, give us a little subscribe, and hopefully you don't get sick of my voice. The other cool thing you can do at the moment is pre-order My Name is Jemima. If you have small children in your life who are between the ages of like 2 and 8, or just anyone who likes dogs or likes gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous pictures, because they are beautiful. Talking about how much I love color and my relationship to color, the illustrator, Alison Corpoise, she just got me. There is like neon pink everywhere. It's amazing. So bookshops being added to more and more bookshops every day. So pick your preferred local indie bookshop and like ask them to get it in. It is up on some of the bigger ones, some that shall not be named, but it's up on, even if you use Goodreads or Storygraph, you can add My Name is Jemima to that, which is really exciting. What else? Keep an eye out for my show links for tickets when they're available to come see Is Anyone Even Watching? Because I promise you it'll be a really fun time. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I'm sometimes there. I make no promises, but I'm at Words by Olivia Muscat on Instagram.
And we'll put links in the show notes as well.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much for your time, Olivia. This has been amazing.
Thanks so much for having me. Oh my gosh, I talk so much.
And well done on finally saying you have a career.
Yay, well done me.
Yay.
Took long enough.
This podcast solves imposter syndrome. Yay.
I'm cured. Oh, it's a beautiful day.
Woohoo.
No, thank you so much. It's been great. Yeah, thank you for letting me ramble on about lots of things that are very important to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Olivia Muscat. Create and Amplify is assisted by the Australian Government through Creative Australia, its principal arts investment and advisory body. Thank you for listening. Until next time.